So in other words, what you're saying is experiment a little personally, and then it becomes not an experiment anymore, it becomes a realization.
Exactly. And I think that's an important lesson to be applied in pretty much everything in life. There's too much today, sort of sheep mentality, where we just accept someone's opinion because it just seems like a good idea, or a lot of people believe that person, so therefore it must be a good idea.
Or I saw it on television.
Yeah, I saw it on television. So this sheep mentality is very pervasive today, and I think it's really hurting progress in society. I think, and that can be in terms of material progress and spiritual progress. We have to sort of embrace our individuality, embrace our uniqueness. We're all totally unique. When God made you, He broke the mold. He broke the mold. You're totally unique. There'll never be anyone like you, and the same with me too. And we have to embrace it, and it's beautiful. So the only way to really find a perfect balance of health and harmony is to embrace that, really tune into what you need. Right? You're the best judge. Tuning into what you need, communicating, learning to communicate directly with God, learning to basically hear the messages of God as God speaks to you in various ways, through other people, through experiences, through realizations, and not simply just turning the channel off and just following blindly because it seems to be a good idea.
So one of the things then that may have triggered, because what I'm thinking triggered your interest, did you actually get physically a little bit low in energy or ill before you decided to look into these things?
Well, yeah, I did. I know, as I said, when I was a monk for 14 years, and what you do learn as a monk, that food is important in maintaining a vow of celibacy, because according to the Vedic teachings, spirituality, or the evolution of consciousness, begins with the tongue. And the tongue has two functions, tasting and vibrating. So what you eat will affect your consciousness. What you speak, as we learn from The Secret and various other philosophies of the law of attraction, the words you speak are literally writing your screenplay. So vibration is very important. Not only what's coming out of you, but what is coming into you, what you allow to enter your ears and to immerse into your body. So spiritual life begins with the tongue, and 50% of that, of course, is tasting. You can know a lot about a person, about their consciousness, by what they eat. They may appear to be very intelligent and very healthy looking, but you can pretty much know exactly where they're at just by watching what they eat and what they speak. My teacher one time said that someone may look very intelligent, but a fool is recognized as soon as he opens his mouth. Or someone may be have a dog mentality, and they could be sitting on a throne, but you throw a shoe or a bone and the dog will jump off the throne. So that's the reality. So spiritual life begins with the tongue. And so what I found is when I was a monk, I had to be careful about overeating. I had to be careful about eating too much of this or too much of that, because it did affect my body and my consciousness. And when I left being a monk, I saw the same thing happening. That not only did it affect me in terms of maintaining vows of celibacy or steadiness of mind, but it affected me physically. I felt lower in energy. I didn't feel inspired, because literally the food does become you. I mean, the food is really what is making your body up, and your mind is affected by the state of your body. That's just the fact. Until we get to the point where we've totally transcended this physical frequency, we're very much affected by what happens to the body in terms of what we put into it and what it's exposed to. So, 99.99% of the population, they're still very much connected to that physical frequency, therefore they have to keep these things in mind. And that applies to people like the Hare Krishnas, who sometimes, not just Hare Krishnas, I have to be careful, but anyone on the spiritual path who tends to think that they're beyond these physical...
I'm not right yet.
Huh?
I'm all right, Jeff.
Yeah, something like that. You know, they think they're beyond these physical influences, and we certainly are not until we are totally transcending them.
But then even the spiritual masters and great yogis pick and choose what they want to eat. They usually go on for a special diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Food for Life, global. Your idea?
Wasn't my idea. The founder of Food for Life is Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Back in the early 70s, around 74, there's a place in India called Mayapur, which is about 3 to 4 hours away from Calcutta, and notorious for flooding. And during one particular flood, actually it was before that, he noticed after some festival that there were children out the back of the temple fighting with dogs over scraps of food. And he saw that. He was so horrified by that scene. He thought, this cannot happen. Where there is a temple of God, there should never be hungry children fighting with dogs over scraps of food, not even fresh food. So he said to his students at the time, look, he called them in and says, look, this should not happen. Wherever there is a temple of God, because God's the Father, the Mother and the Father, therefore there should not be any hunger. So that we should make sure that at least 10-mile radius of a temple, no one should go hungry. So that essentially is the beginning of Food for Life. So that instruction expanded to emergency relief, flood relief in India. Eventually it was expanded further to temples in India, where it became a very common practice for the Hare Krishna temples to provide free food to local poor people and so on. And then eventually, around 1979, 1980, it expanded to various Western countries, particularly in Sydney, where it sort of became a bit more formalized, eventually becoming Hare Krishna Food for Life. I got involved in 83, 84 as a volunteer at one of the Food for Life centers. And I sort of learnt the craft, learning how to cook, learning how to feed people, learned the whole hospitality culture, Indian hospitality culture. Eventually starting my own programs, initially just a university food relief program where I was feeding students, giving them an experience of healthy eating. And then gradually, as I sort of immersed myself in the whole culture of spiritual hospitality, I started expanding my work, becoming a bit more of an educator in the art, teaching others how to start their own program, starting a newsletter, and eventually to the point where I left Australia in '93 to set up the headquarters for Food for Life and became Food for Life Global. Up until that time, Food for Life had sort of developed organically with no real formal structure, with no real solid policies in place, just very, very organic. So my first call of duty was, okay, establish some standards, establish some policies, some talking points, some messages that are consistent, that sort of thing. I built a website. I began traveling, training people, setting up programs all over Eastern Europe. And that's pretty much the history of Food for Life Global. And as a part of my service to Food for Life Global, which was more like a support office for Food for Life programs, was to educate the public about what Food for Life was doing in terms of its practical food relief, but also in the philosophy of Food for Life. That was initially just giving talks on spiritual vegetarianism, like teaching people about the spiritual benefits of vegetarianism when it is done with loving intention. And that became like the talking points, the notes for the food yoga concept. So it was many, many years, like beginning in, say, 96 until 2011, where I started developing this whole concept of food yoga, taking this ancient philosophy of spiritual hospitality and sort of formalizing it into something which was accessible to the public, which was non-sectarian, which anyone could apply. And the motivation behind this is interesting. My teacher, Srila Prabhupada, he said many years ago, in relation to expanding this food relief program, he said that everyone should get a chance to eat prasadam. Prasadam is sanctified food. He says everyone should get a chance to eat prasadam and that this activity should be expanded universally. So I was always thinking, how is it practically possible that so few Hare Krishnas around the world can possibly feed everybody or give everyone a chance to taste this sanctified food?